moving on to speaking of that dreaded three-letter agency and their attempt to screw with actual DeFi and Richard Hart. The other day, man, what a great stream. I think it was Sunday night. Yeah. Nuclear Herbs, the attorney on Twitter that we all kind of follow for different, advice, not advice, but different ideas about what may be going on with this case. He was on with Corey Costa. It was a great stream by those gentlemen. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the updates we've seen there and their conversation. But basically, there is a total timeline for this thing. RH's attorneys basically submitted the motion to dismiss. Well, no, not the actual motion, but the letter. The timeline has been agreed to by the two sides. So their motion to dismiss is due in April. RH's attorneys reply by the SEC is due in August, and then oral arguments in October for both sides. So hey, that basically computes to like this year. Not much is really going to happen. We don't have anything to concern ourselves with. I mean, I don't think we really do anyway, but, you can watch along the way and see what the motion, we know what's going to happen. The motion to dismiss is going to be filed. Probably see some interesting things from it, see what all the angles and further detail that Richard's attorneys are taking and everything. Then you'll see an SEC week comeback argument in August, much like they just did with these letters we're seeing go back and forth. And then October might be a little bit interesting. But basically this year, no reason to even think about this thing. We're basically all in the clear for 2024. And I think we will be for the rest of this ecosystem's livelihood, really, when it comes to these people. But nothing really big until the fall. So anyway, basically nothing to think about for this year. Nuclear Herbs, I wanted to bring up a bookmark tweet I had of his, but his stream with Corey, I just want to set you up for this Ewok because I know you watched it too. I watched the repeat of it yesterday. But he said that, hey, he thinks that Richard's legal team is stellar. And if he had, the money that RH has, it's exactly the kind of team he would assemble. He said that April the 8th is the date when the motion to dismiss will officially get filed, because that's the date that they chose. They're not going to do it before then and give the SEC more time. And Nuclear Herbs also personally really liked in their letter about the motion to dismiss the Rule 12B argument, which was that RH has no contacts or affiliation with whatever quote unquote New York people they're talking about, referring that somebody within Uniswap might be located there, and at least one investor is, which is really been an interesting thing all along. Like basically just jurisdiction, like the fact that somebody within Uniswap or that worked at Uniswap lives in New York, at least one investor lives. It's just basically to get the case to New York where they wanted it to go. I have more to get to with his stream, but so far what I've said to you, what are your kind of reactions, and what did you think about this stream overall?
Well, overall, I thought it was really good. He brought up a lot of good points. One of the overall takes that I got from this, and this is more so of an opinion that I formed, is that anybody at this point that's upset or worried about SEC stuff, it tends to lead me to believe that they're a short-term holder. They're not in this for the long term anyway. And I think they just want short-term gains and get out. You know what I mean? This is going to be a long, drawn-out process. And I think, people are always asking for predictions on price. Well, you've got to include time. Like Ethereum did a 14,000x. Yes, but it took 6 years. So are you willing to wait that long, for something similar? Because this could do, very similar gains. So it's just one of the things that led me to believe when I was watching and seeing some comments come in, and, how they were just so concerned and upset and worried about it. And for me, it was more of a sense of relief that this guy, like you said, he did talk about the dream team, the money being spent and, the normal average person could not afford to fight something like this. So, that's why a lot of judgments get sent out. He also mentioned that, they can't go for more than what they've already really asked for, which was what, $12 million? And he's probably spending triple, quadruple that on his lawyers, I would guess. So, the worst that's going to happen is a settlement that comes to that. It's a civil case. He mentioned that a couple times. There is no there's no criminal case. It's all civil. So, all these people that are like, Richard's going to go to jail, Richard's on the run, Richard's all that stuff can be thrown out. I just thought it was overall a very bullish sentiment. He didn't say much that we hadn't heard, but there was just a lot of informational things. You know what I mean? It wasn't. I don't think there was any real aha moments for me anyway, but it was just very informative.
It definitely was, and I did think it was interesting though. Like I was talking about the whole jurisdiction thing, and Nuclear Herbs really liking that they went after that angle, because he followed up with like, just to see. I mean, we're talking about how weak the SEC's arguments with everything that they do, basically. Part of their rebuttal, if you will, and their letter after seeing the letter about a motion to dismiss, regarding, like, what are you talking about in New York? He doesn't even live in the United States. How do they have the jurisdiction to do this? The SEC's response mentioned that he's made YouTube videos that people there have seen. I mean,
so what?
Yeah, I don't know how. It's a stretch. I just feel, we've all. I think that's one of the top 2 or 3 things, basically universally, since this thing came down, that people have been like, "What in the hell are they talking about here?"
Right.
That's really been one of the sticking points. Like, how do you have the jurisdiction to even bring this case here?
Right. And the one thing we don't know too is did that investor, and it's obviously the one that filed the complaint, right? Cleo, was that whatever that?
It's just, I don't know. Some people try to protect the identity, and you just go right at it.
I don't care.
I don't really care. I mean, he's tweeting about this shit all the time. I mean, he basically enters a new ecosystem. He's like, oh, he's into Zen, and now he's into Titan X, and then next thing you know, Jake Sharp's, like, then he's got like Jack Levin hurt investors by this, and then he's reporting them to the SEC or something like that.
Well, the dude shows up in, I've heard several Twitter spaces where he shows up and he's just I don't know, just ridiculous. So he deserves the flack he gets. But anyway, we don't know. When did he invest? Did he invest in the adoption amplifier? Well, if that's the case, that wasn't in Uniswap. That was, something completely different. So there's a lot of things that aren't really known and that could be argued to say that about the jurisdiction. We don't know. Could have bought it on another exchange too, because very early there were a couple different things out there that you could buy hex. I forget, one was Saturn something. It was weird, and I remember the guy, the other BitConnect dude, Craig. I remember he was pushing this one platform very early, and it wasn't Uniswap and it wasn't the adoption amplifier. So, there were a couple of things out there. So who knows where that person bought the hex? If Uniswap played a part, maybe it did. But again, that becomes a secondary market, and those have different rules too. So just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah. Last thing that kind of caught my eye that Nuclear Herbs mentioned was that he did believe that the Amicus brief can definitely help in this case. And you did mention it, and I didn't follow up. But yeah, on the Coinbase one too, they have an Amicus brief there too that I think the judge has she allowed it into the case already, didn't she?
Right.
And has acknowledged it. Yeah.
And Nuclear Herbs said, hey guys, maybe you guys should reach out to Cynthia Loomis and ask her to write one for you. It can't hurt. We have time. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she was on one of Discourse Syndicate shows with Kinetics at one point.
Oh,
I believe.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Or RG. So there is a little bit of a history there. We do have the Amicus brief that's already filed with 47. What are we up to now? 47,000 signatures.
I'd imagine even more than that now, but yeah.
And maybe even if she just kind of passes it along, if she doesn't have the time to write her own, but signs it and kind of, I don't want to say sponsors it, but says, hey, look what's going on here. I'm going to put my name on this and send it to you on behalf of the Hexagon, Pulsican community, whatever. That's a possibility as well, because I know that one was very well written, likewise. So
yeah,
he recommended that we could, attempt to go see if she would be willing to do that. Did you find anything?
that would not specifically on there. I did see he had a different government official or something named Cynthia on, though, strangely enough. But that doesn't
Maybe
mean
that's what I'm
that she
thinking.
wasn't. Doesn't necessarily mean she wasn't. I just didn't see it here. But yeah,
What
I mean,
was
she
her name?
certainly.
Which Cynthia
I
did you
forget the
find?
last. I already X'd out of the tab. It was Cynthia something. It definitely was not Loomis.
Okay.
But yeah, but yeah, that would be phenomenal to get that in the hands of somebody like her, or really anybody. I mean, that's the cool thing. And I mean, Richard's attorneys are one thing. I mean, they're his attorneys. So,
Yeah.
putting some suits and ties to this whole thing, I think helps some people who are not within crypto and don't understand that, like, a somebody who's created something that looks and acts like Richard does is actually more so what you want instead of the button-up suit and ties.
Right.
But I think it is interesting to put, not that there isn't any, but in their eyes, more legitimacy to this kind of stuff, to explain it a little bit better. Gary Funding Jim talks about it all the time, and like, bridging over to talk to the Cardones and stuff like that. They need it's like, who are you talking to? You have to understand what it is they want, what they understand, and how to link that bridge from an ecosystem like this to that person in terms of understanding. So yeah, to get an amicus brief written or in her hands would be awesome. But just the fact that we are seeing another precedent here with an amicus brief in the Coinbase case that could help them out as well, I would think an amicus brief in this case would maybe even be more helpful. I mean, who the hell am I? But to me, it's kind of like, this Coinbase is Coinbase. That's a huge institution. It's been around for, 3 cycles now. Everybody knows who Coinbase is. Richard Hart, there may be a lot of people within crypto that, because of the, kind of blacklisted nature of these tokens and everything, still don't actually even know who he is, really,
Right.
or aren't that familiar with this ecosystem. So I think having an amicus brief with that many people could be really impactful for us. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, we'll see. But that was a great stream by those guys. Shout out to Corey for always having interesting guests on from all different walks of life. Axis, of course, who was in the chat tonight, was just on there a little bit ago that I checked out. So kudos to those guys as well.